Merry Christmas, everybody. You've opened the last door on your Advent calendar.
Where's the chocolate?
Oh, shit, I ate the chocolate. On the What the Flick Christmas countdown. It's here. It's happened.
Mele Kalikimaka.
That's right.
See?
Matt
I'm still on brand.
You are.
I am.
Way to do it. Matt Atchity, Alonso, Duralde. We have been here all month talking about 25 of my favorite holiday movies.
It's been a wonderful month.
It has been so wonderful. Many of them featured in my book, Have Yourself a Movie Little Christmas, now available on Amazon. I do weirdly sell a lot of copies on Christmas Day. I don't know why, but I'm not going to question it. Pick it up and be ready for next year. So, of course, what are we going to talk about for our grand finale but the mother of all holiday movies, Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life.
You've got your wish. You've never been bored. A chance to see what the world would be like without you.
Now, you're Ernie Bishop, and you live in Bailey Park with your wife and kid. That's right, isn't it?
I live in a shack in Potter's Field, and I ain't never seen you before in my life.
I'm going home and see my wife and family.
This house ain't been lived in for 20 years.
Your brother, Harry Bailey, broke through the ice and was drowned at the age of 9. You weren't there to save Harry. Strange, isn't it? Each man's life touches so many other lives. You really had a wonderful life. Don't you see what a mistake it would be to throw it away?
Get me back. I don't care what happens to me. I want to live again.
So this movie has a fascinating history in that its sort of trajectory is almost George Bailey-ish itself. It came out in 1947, didn't do well at all. In fact, did so poorly that it torpedoed Frank Capra's independent production company, Liberty Films. This was the first movie that he made after coming back from World War II and doing the Why We Fight films. And by the way, if you haven't seen the documentary 5 Came Back on Netflix, check it out. Guillermo del Toro has some fascinating things to say about It's Wonderful Life and how it fits into the overall arc of Frank Capra's career. Anyway, so this movie was a dud. It died on the vine. And then it fell into the public domain because nobody renewed the copyright on it.
But it also got nominated for some Academy Awards.
It got nominated for some Academy Awards, but it lost almost all of them to The Best Years of Our Lives, which is another...
nobody remembers.
Which is a... Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now? Which is another movie about the after World War II period, and apparently was more in the zeitgeist of what people at that time wanted to see, as opposed to It's a Wonderful Life. So yeah, so they don't renew the copyright. It falls in the public domain. Any TV station can air it, and they do. I grew up in the 1970s where it was literally on every channel all the frickin' time.
Right, and then they were going to colorize it.
I think they did colorize it.
Right, they did
actually.
colorize
Yeah.
it, and that was the whole thing where everybody freaked out that Ted Turner was going to colorize It's a Wonderful Life and show it in color. And
you can, I mean, like if these days, still if you buy the Blu-ray, like they'll throw that colorized version.
So I'm going to admit something.
What's that?
Until this weekend, I had not ever watched this movie all the way through.
I thought you were an American.
I watched parts of it, and part of it is when it came out, when it got broadcast in color, I started watching it, and the colorization was so awful, I turned it off.
Of course.
Right? And
so that alone turned you off?
No, but it was one of those things that as I embraced my love of film, it was a bit of like, you know what, I want to make sure that I am going to sit down and pay attention to this movie. And it just hadn't come up. And so when you assigned me to watch this, I'm like, good, now this will be a great opportunity. And I'm glad I did, because you know, we talk about movies that are legendary. We talk about actors and performances and just kind of their standing and how their legacy affects things. Jimmy Stewart in this movie is riveting.
Oh,
he
absolutely.
is terrific, and the kind of the chemistry he has with the woman playing Mary,
Donna Reed,
is so electric, you know, to be a little bit, I mean, that scene where they're walking and she's in the robe and he's in the football uniform, there's a bit of that it's a little like, dude, but
it's very sexy.
But it's very sexy for at a movie made at that time is also really risque.
Well, the scene where they're both on the phone
Yeah,
with
oh my
Sam
God.
Wainwright,
Right.
they're like...
and so I watched this movie, and you know, sometimes we look at movies that are older movies and you have to kind of put yourself in the headspace of audiences. I think that this movie is, if not as relevant, at least as emotional as almost anything you're going to see.
Oh, absolutely.
And by the end of this movie, I was choked up. I got emotional. And a lot of it is not, A lot of it's the direction, and a lot of it is the script and the acting, and this is a terrific movie. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is look, there's probably a lot of people that have never sat down and watched this all the way through. You know you're out there, but you know what? Believe the hype. This movie lives up to it.
And unless you think that it's all like gumdrops and rainbows, this movie gets fucking dark.
Yeah, it does.
This is a movie about a guy who threatens to commit suicide on Christmas Eve and is shown by an angel what a life would have been like in this town had he never lived.
Well, and part of that too is there's this consistent, and the thing that I was somewhat surprised by is that you see as George grows up, there's this hopefulness and kind of excitement in him that comes up in the scene where he's first kind of wooing Mary after the dance, after everybody does the Charleston, they fall in the pool. And then later on, you see as the world seems to be conspiring to keep him in Bedford Falls, you see like there's a stoop to his shoulders.
Absolutely.
And there's this bitterness that you see, that Stewart is so good at showing George trying to keep that bitterness back.
Right.
But it's there.
This
and
is
it's this
He's
somewhat surprisingly nuanced performance, I guess.
He is constantly sacrificing for the good of the town, for the good of the working people of the town, against the machinations of the evil rich Mr. Potter. And Frank Capra, like we people call his movies Capricorn or whatever, but like the stuff that he has to say about the haves versus the have-nots is so incredibly relevant in 2017. You can't even believe it. Like this was the first movie he made after coming back from World War II. The last movie he made before going to World War II is Meet John Doe with Gary Cooper and Barbara Stanwyck, which is also about a guy who threatens to commit suicide on Christmas Eve because of a rich fucker who's ruining his life.
And to be clear, Capra hated Roosevelt. Like he was a staunch
he was a conservative
for a long time.
But he was also very distrustful of corporatism and of like kind of fake populist millionaires who were trying to pursue their own agenda on the backs of the working class. Seriously, watch these movies. You will be blown away. But, I mean, and it's funny because It's a Wonderful Life has become such a universally embraced movie. What do Republicans see when they see this movie? Do they honestly think that they're George Bailey and not Mr. Potter? I mean, come on.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Small business, right?
Yeah.
I mean, right. This is a guy, and I love that we get this story that you're right, he's constantly sacrificing himself. And you see, it doesn't hide his disappointment and his bitterness.
Oh,
and he still...
The scene when Sam Wainwright comes breezing in, when they're like, dedicating one of their little houses to one of their clients and wants to see they want to come with him to Miami. Right. And he's like, nope, can't do it. And then he goes to their like old crappy car and he's just like, you get this feeling of this guy who has given his entire life and he feels so unappreciated. And then what's so great about the ending is the realization that no, they do appreciate him and they do care.
Well, and I got less that it's even unappreciated so much as he starts to doubt that it matters.
Right. It's and that's end for what?
Right. Yeah. And that to me is the tragedy, is that he keeps giving and he seems that he can't catch a break. Right. And so the despair that sets in for him, and the movie talks about this early on as you see the angels in heaven discussing this. This is a guy who's lost his faith. And it's not so much faith as a Christian faith or a religious faith, it's that he's lost his faith in himself and his community. And just his community. And every time he turns around, he's dealt some other terrible hand. And I think that this is where Capra shows what he believes in America, is that, all right, you know what? We're going to just take this one on the chin and we're going to do the best we can. And it gets to be where George finally is like, I just can't do it anymore. No. I'm just done, right?
And it's being pushed to that extreme that then, that things, go in a different direction. But you talk about Stewart's performance, which is one of the great ones of all time. He was actually still suffering from PTSD from the war while making this movie and not telling people about it.
Huh.
And over the course of Stewart's career, I think that It's a Wonderful Life occupies an interesting space because it is kind of the turning point between the sort of like aw shucks yokel-y stuff of the early films and then the darker psychological portrayals that we get in movies like Vertigo and Anatomy of a Murder. So this is kind of the transition film between Jimmy Stewart light and Jimmy Stewart dark in a way.
That you brought it up earlier, that alternate reality sequence is really, really dark.
Yeah.
Right? It's very dark and there's a fear there. Donna Reed, like the horror of this guy claiming to be her husband.
Right.
You know, she sells that really well. I think she's terrific in that. In this, she's gorgeous. I also want to point out that I think Barrymore's really good in this.
Oh, yeah.
In that this would be easy to turn into a very over-the-top
Hammy,
cliche.
yeah.
And he dials it back.
Yeah,
and,
he-
and
well,
a guy with, you know, a guy that old who came up in an environment where you were
From the
being
theater
really,
and, yeah.
being really over the top. You know, it's almost like Edward G. Robinson playing it subtle. Like it's the same kind of thing. Like, yes, he's still chewing the scenery, but he's taken smaller bites.
He had played Scrooge for years on the radio, and that was how he got that gig. And so I think maybe that's sort of what tempered it. Yeah, a great army of character actors in this movie: Beulah Bondi, Thomas Mitchell, Gloria Graham. You know, you name it. Just a really deep bench there. Just, I think, Capra's greatest films, one of the great American films ever made, and one of the great Christmas movies of all time. So yeah, if you haven't watched It's a Wonderful Life, today is a great day to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us all month. It's been a real treat doing these. You know, the book, it's great. I like it. But, you know, what's been really fun to kind of sit with all my What the Flick peeps and talk about these movies. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you all have a really great Christmas. Wishing you all a wonderful new year ahead. Thank you for watching.